I think I will. I said go live. We live? I thought we were going to do a intro. So I did not have it queued up right. So we did not do our little intro we were expecting. And I'm a little worried about ending and restarting. So we're going to skip the music today. But we're also going to wait till 10 o'clock before we really get started. So, hi, everybody. The producer today screwed up. So, hi.
We'll get a new one, Kathleen. Punt.
Yeah, I should have let Chet do it. We'll get it straight. We just do this once a month, so we sometimes forget all the details. And I haven't actually done the producing for a really long time. So yeah. But it says we're live in 1 minute. We may not be live.
No, we're live, Kathleen.
We're live? Okay.
Yeah.
I got this thing up there that says, oh, that's when we started. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. All right, I feel like an idiot. Okay, so it is now 10 o'clock. I'm going to welcome everybody to the stream right at 10 o'clock, right on time. And so welcome, everybody. I'm so glad that you joined us today. I am Kathleen Dollard. I am the PM Program Manager of .NET Languages at Microsoft. So that means that I help out and work with the amazing teams that we have across C#, Visual Basic, and today's special guest, FSharp. And so with that, I would like to introduce my co-host, Chet Husk, and I'm going to let him give you a little bit about his day job and his side project, both of which are interesting today.
Hey, folks. I'm Chet Husk. I'm the PM for the .NET SDK and MS Build and a few other things. But more relevant to our discussion today, I'm a longtime FSharp user, and I maintain, along with a couple other folks, the VS Code tooling for Ionide, or for FSharp called Ionide. And so that's my stake here. I am a highly invested user in all the great stuff that Vlad is going to be talking about today.
And highly invested community member, so we can also talk. You can also talk from that perspective. And we also have the lead of the FSharp team, the engineering team, Vlad Zarytovskii here. So Vlad, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey everyone. I hope I hope my microphone is good. I'm Vlad. I probably I talked to many of you over Twitter or GitHub or Slack or our Discord, and but for anyone we're not familiar, who I am. I am engineering manager for the FSharp team in Microsoft, as well as other things, but it's irrelevant today. And I thankfully still do some real work, meaning I still do write code, and some of it is FSharp. And I'm here today mainly to discuss or chat about new stuff, coming stuff, or some future, or answer some questions. So yeah, hey everyone.
Great. All right. So before we get into the new stuff, what I would like to start with is just talking about what we love about FSharp. It's a really special language to all of us, and I would really just like to start with that. Who wants to kick that off? I can.
I think Chet should.
Fine.
Chet should go.
Yeah.
He was hard to.
I mean, I wanted to give other people the opportunity, but I mean, I really love FSharp, the language, the idioms, like the way it wants you to write code, and the community around it. I've been doing FSharp, I think, for 8 years now, a little more. And the thing that first drew me to it was actually the fake build scripting language at the time, because we had a really complex build process. And I looked at this thing that was very succinct, very expressive, and it was something that I already had access to. Like I didn't even realize it, but I had FSharp scripts available already. And so I started dabbling in it. And the more that I started doing build engineering in F#, the more sort of the ethos of the language seeped in, right? This idea that syntax doesn't have to be heavy to deliver a lot of value, to deliver a lot of features. This idea that types can be inferred off of usage, right? Sort of lessening the mental load that the programmer has to do as they're writing. Like, it just seeped into every little aspect of my coding practice, and then I discovered like the beauties of the async computation expression and how easy it made it to sort of tackle some of the challenges of .NET asynchronicity, and it just kept on growing. So I loved all those aspects about the language, and then I got plugged into the community, which was full of really invested folks who were like stakeholders in making it good, right? So that's sort of the short version of why I love it. It's both the things that the language can do. It's also the runtime that the language is built on. Like, all of my expressive code runs on a rock solid foundation that has amazing platform support and incredible speed. So like, I don't have to sacrifice that to get the things I want out of a language. So in my book, it's the complete package.
Yeah. So you talked about the platform. And so I'm assuming right there you meant, I mean, there is some F# layer, but mostly .NET. But what I want to point out there is that one of the things about F# is that it's not only .NET. It's also JavaScript via the Fable compiler, and it's available for other things. It is strictly a language that is more isolated from, so C# partners with the runtime. F# definitely takes advantage of every bit of that it can, but it's less, the language can also run on other platforms. So yeah, I just want to add to what you said in terms of there's a simplicity that I find in F#, and it comes partly from the inferred typing, but also in how strong the typing is and the way that it handles a couple of unique situations. And one of those is nulls. So it being, there are no nulls by default in F#. Vlad's going to talk a little bit more about nulls before the end of the hour, I'm quite sure, or at least I suspect he will. But there's no, by default, F# itself it's doesn't have nulls, which means that one of the simplest places that you encounter that, and also discriminated unions, is that if you do a pattern match in F#, it can be exhaustive. In fact, it's kind of hard for it not to be exhaustive. You can say, well, just do everything else, but there actually is a finite set of what everything else is, unlike C#, where you are generally not exhaustive and you're generally having to handle, well, and everything else. So if you go against a type, for example, and then you have to say and everything else. So in F#, you'd be unlikely to just use a raw type. You'd be more likely to use a discriminated union that then held whatever type you needed within it so that you had a bound exhaustive list. Now, that's something we talk about for C#, but F#'s had it since the beginning, I think. I'm not good with F# history, by the way, and so none of us finished since the beginning. Actually, we've all come to F# sometime in the last. It's like, I think F# is now 10 or 11 years old, depending on how you measure it, and none of us, I think, were there at the beginning. So yeah, so that's some of my stuff. Vlad, what about you? And you were doing F# before you came to being an engineering lead, which was convenient.
Yeah, I changed some settings with my microphone. I hope you can hear me well.
Yeah, I think it is.
So, yeah, I before I came to the F# team, I had some experience with F#. Obviously, this is what in the first place why I wanted to join the team. I had also experience with other let's call them functional languages. I don't personally think that like F# is a functional language, and it's a good thing to be fair, that we embrace the kind of that it's not only functional, that we can do quite actually, if I may say, quite nice and pretty object programming, and like as Edgar mentioned in the chat, like the object expressions, like it allows you to not write a bunch of code which is like just a throwaway or just one time thing. Anyways, but one of the things I really loved about F# is that when I first came to, or when I first time started writing Scala or Haskell, you know, like people or communities, or even, you know, like when you read someone else's code, it kind of requires you to understand certain things. Like, you know, you need to understand, you know, what the type classes are, right? Like, you know, and it's you know, it's kind of the easier thing, but you know, the how, or like terminology which like people are using, or like, you know, how comments are written, it takes a lot of time. However, like when you read FSharp, or like, you know, when you write FSharp, we try to suggest people to avoid such things, like, you know, just write code, like, you know, compiler will take care about everything else for you. And like we, of course, like we have, you know, like we have certain issues which we're trying to improve, like as it was set nullables, it was not very it could be better, and it will be better. I will talk about it later in details if we will still have time. Or, you know, things like static traits, which like you can use, you don't have to, but if you need to, like, you know, there are ways of doing like very generic codes which almost look like dynamically typed, but yeah, but it's not, you know, like it's very tight. Yeah, and you know, .NET as a platform and JavaScript as a target platforms, like, you know, thanks to Fable, which is a community project, it's amazing. I am still impressed how people can do that, you know, cross compilation to the different languages. It's really good. And you know, both platforms are very powerful. And you know, like we you know, a bunch of people I talk to who use FSharp, it amazes me for like how many applications they you know, they use it for.
Yeah. So one of the things you said, Vlad, I want to follow up on, which is FSharp, you know, it was originally thought of as a functional language, as .NET's functional language, in response to things like Haskell and Camel and other things that were out there. And it developed as a research language from people that were experts in that. But one of the things that FSharp has done all along the way, even from the beginning, is to say, now what's the best thing here? Kind of that concept. Now, what's the best thing here? What's the best thing for .NET? Well, it's a strongly typed language, but it's different. And so we don't have type classes, for example, which is a Haskell feature that we think is probably not right for FSharp. Some people here may disagree with me, you know, but you know, we think it's probably not. And so it's been a what's best for a language running in .NET. And the whole world has caught up with some of the functional concepts. You know, so we wind up with this world where now the idea of a function as a first-class citizen, that's kind of there in an awful lot of languages. And so it doesn't set FSharp apart. And so I think that's one of the reasons that we tend to think of it as a, you know, it's a very general purpose language. It does a lot of stuff. And it's quite good at OOP, actually, if you want to do that. It's just that for an awful lot of problems, function first is actually a really good way to do things, which is why everybody in C# writes so many lambda expressions. And, you know, so it's it really is a good metaphor. But some people are surprised that, you know, here is the folks guiding the Microsoft contribution to FSharp, which is a great deal of FSharp. Not all of it for sure, but a good deal of it. That we do not see it as like, it's our functional answer. Yeah, okay, it's still more functional than C#, but you know, that's not really the way we think about it. We think about it as the language that is free to do the best things more easily than a language like C# that has such an incredible legacy that we work within. So yeah, I don't know. Chet, you want to add anything to that?
Oh, you nailed it. The flexibility of the language itself and the ecosystem that it's a part of is a huge selling point for it.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that I wanted to follow up on, Chet. I think it was you. You mentioned the way that the computation expressions handle the async. Okay, so I just want to build a little bit on that, because one of the things that FSharp has done is to build like these base ideas across the language in a really strong way. So computation expression, for those of you that, I'm gonna spill my coffee. For those of you that don't know F#, a computation expression is effectively a DSL. It's a way to write a mini language that's set off by curly brackets, and then you can have a mini language. That's kind of a simplification, but I think it's useful here. And so one of those is our async support. There's two versions because there's one that predates task and value. I think it had task, but didn't have value task back in the day before C# had async, and then it's been updated. I think 2 years ago we updated that. But it's also how you handle a sequence, which is a link-like thing, and it's also something you can write yourself. And so one of the things that I did at one point is to actually write a Roslyn wrapper. It actually isn't useful, but if you know Roslyn, you know how complicated Roslyn is. I wrote a DSL, and it was very easy to write DSL as a computation expression. Easy is here maybe not the best word because it is an investment in understanding computation expressions. But yeah, I think that this notion of these really deep concepts that go kind of top to bottom in the language is also one of its strengths, because it didn't evolve out of Java and then just keep evolving into being this fantastic language that C# is. It came out of, and it still has a single mind guiding an awful lot of it with Don Syme. You're seeing us here today, but Don is definitely still involved, and we definitely embrace his contribution and support of F#. Yeah, he's not here today, but he's still here. So yeah. All right. Do we have anything from the chat that we want to bring up? Somebody said they love piping. Yes, we didn't mention piping. Awesome. There's an easy way to take the result of one function and send it to another function, which, if you think about link, is something you do actually in C# as well. I'm just assuming we have some folks here that are C# thinking and that would like a little bit of parallels to F#. F# definitely stands on its own, but yeah.
Well, this ties into one of the things that I learned quickly and learned to love about F# when I first started was there's a sense of consistency not to the language internally, but also the broader ecosystem. So one of the things that stands out when you're doing piping is your data flows sort of left to right, top to bottom. And that concept just sort of gradually is true at almost every scope as well. So it's true within a pipeline to calculate a value. It's true within your source files, generally speaking, right? And it's also true within your projects, right? And so there's a structure to F# projects that typically tends to emerge where your entry points are all the way down at the bottom and your pure domain concepts are up at the very top. And in the middle is the glue that brings them all together. So as somebody who was learning the language, learning that idiom was something that immediately transferred to almost every code base I looked at. It's slightly less true today. We have some features that are sort of escape hatches for this, and I think Vlad might end up talking today about some of the tooling enhancements that relieve some of those constraints. But broadly, those rules are consistent and something that you'll find all over the place.
Yeah, and I just want to underscore something there for folks coming from C#, because it's one of the things that can be quite surprising, is that your project, the order of things in your project file is essential for F# today. It is how F# does the type inference. So it doesn't have a look ahead. At least it doesn't have one today. We think about that problem sometimes, but I wouldn't assure you that we will solve it. I'm not sure that it will be solved. Vlad's smiling, so he might have a different answer. But we basically take the type inference off of what you have done before. And so that is a very different approach than C#. And so the compiler is actually a completely different compiler with a different design. So yeah. So Vlad, we should let you jump in here. We just said a bunch of stuff.
Sure.
Right.
Actually, I actually wanted to add something about piping and it's a very interesting point. So the whole idea of piping in F# or in actually any language or any ML language is built on top of currying and partial application. And using piping, I was able to explain to people who are new to the F# and functional or functional programming in general, because it's very broad category, and I was able to explain very easily like why piping works and why like how partial application works, and it's been like, people were kind of, it was a very surprising moment for them, or like wow moments, like, oh yeah, like I can do so much more. And I guess like this is also why in some other languages it's harder to make it work properly or to make it look good. But yeah, I'm not sure like what we should talk about next, but I have we can okay.
I want us to answer a question here, okay? And either one of you can pick this up, okay? Because I can't do this right now off the top of my head well, okay? Who can give us a simplistic, maybe, pretty common denominator explanation of what currying and partial applications are? Because we just use those words and they're very functional words, but in the end, they're really actually pretty simple concepts. They just often get explained in very confusing ways. So I don't want to do that. No confusing, no lambda expression, no lambda calculus theory here.
Let me try and take a stab at it. So currying is the process of converting a function that takes multiple parameters into a series of functions that each take a single parameter, right? So if you think about an add function, there are typically two parameters, left side, right side. I'm sure there's a mathematical term for that. But in FSharp, if you define an add parameter that takes, or an add function that takes two parameters, what you get is actually 2 or 3 different functions under the covers. And you will end up with an add function that takes a single parameter, which returns a function that takes another parameter, which then gives you your value, right? This process of automatically generating the sequence of functions is currying. And partial application is when you as a user only supply a subset of the parameters to a function. And these things work together fairly nicely because function syntax in FSharp is very uniform. It's all just white space. You're applying some parameters or you're applying all parameters and it all looks the same.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully that made sense to people. We are getting a couple questions in the chat. So we might want to pick up first, maybe in order. I mean, they just happen to come in order. So we got Edgar's and Leonardo's and Lucas all look like ones that actually, it's a piping in C# question, which is actually Alex's, I'm sorry. So yeah, piping for C#, we're not there right now. Honestly, DUs get more attention right now. We would discriminated unions. We would really like to have a discriminated union in C#. It is incredibly difficult, and I understand that people have a really hard time believing us when we say that. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is that F# style discriminated unions and the type system don't always get along well. The way that F# works as a whole, you have less expectations of how casting and conversions work between different types, and therefore your expectations are a little different if you work with F#. And so there's some of those problems can kind of get swept under the rug a little bit, and it works great in F#. But the way that a deep object-oriented programming language like C# is, which is, it's object-oriented first, it's very deeply object-oriented, your expectations are going to be very hard to meet. If we do an F# style, we still think that that is an important aspect, especially exhaustiveness. But TypeScript also has an idea of discriminated unions, and they are quite different. And TypeScript people want to see something like that. And so we have to unify. We have to, and basically the bottom line is we have to find the C# discriminated union. It will not be an F# discriminated union. It will not be a TypeScript discriminated union based on our current thinking. That's the way we're thinking about the problem right now. I can tell you we did a lot of work last year. We then kind of need to let it percolate a little bit and needed to work on .NET 8, which will not have, C# 12 would not have discriminated unions. And then we're going to pick it back up in the next month or 2. And we really want to see it. We want to see it as badly as the community wants to see it. So discriminated unions have more attention. Piping might be out there in the future, but right now, not on the table. And what's the next one? I had a couple there.
Next one is from Leandro.
Yeah, and I think I should probably answer this one first. Sorry, this one too. Yeah, I can jump in here as well. The answer is yes, and it's good that it's that way. Okay, so C# is designed completely differently than F#. So F# is, it's a community-oriented language. We have a lot of contributors. I think last count for FSharp 8, we had 72 contributors, and I mean that's an incredible number. Nothing like what we see for C#. And this is a very different kind of design. So C# works. We have members on the design team. We have members from the runtime. We have members from ASP.NET, and so we have a level of investment in getting those things right and in tuning C# to make your life faster, because the runtime is C#. And so when we make C# faster, then everybody benefits, no matter what language they're in. And so there's a bunch of reasons that's really good that C# stays up front on this. They also bleed from it. They also, there's things that when you look at C#, there's definitely a lot of warts in there. And so I think that letting it then percolate into F#, even though it is a little bit later, I think it's actually highly desirable. And I would really, I guess what I said I think is most important there is that the runtime is in C#. Because the runtime is in C#, we want to have the best partnership be between the runtime and C# so that everyone benefits. And F# definitely benefits from the runtime going faster and the runtime getting improvements. Now, Vlad might have more to add to that, because it also takes off the team. The team can do more fun stuff, more good stuff you can actually see, instead of the behind the. I mean, we have 8 features in C# 12, and of those, there are probably 2 you care about. There's that much work that gets done on the underpinnings and behind the scenes, and that you might use it, but you might not, kind of stuff. That where F# can focus more on the things you actually care about. So yeah, this one I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with where we're at here, even though you're right. The BCL is C# first. Yeah. Vlad, do you want to add anything to that?
Not really. I mean, we work well with standard IL, which is pretty much BCL, and every time there is a new runtime feature is introduced, or like even new IL is introduced, like we try to react, and we support it. We may not. So I guess I want to talk a bit more about like interop and like how we deal with it, and since people are asking about BCL and about the features, different features in different languages on the .NET. We always try to make sure that like we can consume DLLs from C#. One exception is source generators, but we're going there. Like we are, we have few experiments. We're working on that. Like normal features, like non-code gen or like non-source gen, we're trying to make sure we support it. We're trying to make sure we can load the DLL on a appropriate runtime and so on. One thing which is a bit harder is will we support feature X, right? Like if the C# releasing extensions, right? Like for those who are not familiar, extensions are kind of traits or implicits, or actually both, and so we want to support, for example, like we want to support this feature, but we don't yet know on which level we're going to support it. Like how it's gonna play with existing F# features, like inlining, like the SRTPs, and this is huge decision, because once it's there forever, and nothing we can do about it. We cannot just pull it from the compiler and just deal with it. And it's obviously Don is calling shots here, whether, because he sees the language in a certain way, though we work as a team usually when we're discussing features, but he can always say yeah, I don't like this feature, let's do the minimal support and kind of forget about it. And sometimes it's a good thing, because we want a language to be simplistic, and we want people to just enjoy writing it and enjoy working with it. But yeah, sorry, I going back to interop, we usually try to wait some time until the feature stabilizes. And for example, I know that extensions support past C# like current C# 12, it might get runtime support. It might get, some features to kind of have a lightweight code gen, so it's kind of zero code abstraction, which people love. And we want to wait certain amount of time, and then we want to support certain things. Same thing with the records interop. We probably going to release it. Not probably. We're going to release it in FSharp 8 because now it's probably not going to change, or no drastic changes, and we want to do that, or unmanaged constraints as well. So we I've seen a bunch of people on Twitter asking, it's like, hey, when we going to interop with the ref fields? And the answer is usually when they stabilize, because we don't want to. So we don't want to also iterate on them as often because we're a much smaller team. So yeah.
And there's also there's a staged approach to these things, and sometimes too, I want to call out the support for the static interfaces with abstract methods, right? That's a runtime level feature. And so there's a high urgency for the team to be able to support consuming those, because they're going to start showing up on types. They're going to start being used in library code. So that's super high priority to get right, so that we are good citizens on the runtime. But the ability to author is something that, logically, sequentially can follow after that, right? And I see that as the same sort of principle that you were just talking about there. We need to make sure that we are good citizens first, and then we need to surface the full feature in a way that makes sense in the context of FSharp.
Yeah. And I think we learn on that, because read-only is a case where we weren't out in front on that, and for a whole lot of reasons that don't matter right now, except that we were late, and FSharp ignored C# having something marked as is. I'm not saying the right thing. I don't mean read only. I mean required. I'm sorry. I do not mean read only. I meant required. I got the R right. So yeah, we weren't out in front on that, and so there was a while where required was just ignored by FSharp, which broke the C# contract, which was not the intention of interop. And so we learned from that, and we actually changed some relationships. So we are more part of the conversation. Vlad is investing more in visiting the C# language design when it's appropriate. And he's been talking about discriminated unions to that group. And so we're doing a better job, I think, of involving FSharp. It's never going to be perfect, because C# is doing what's right for C#. FSharp is doing what's right for FSharp. And, so that is where we're at right now. We have a ton of stuff in the chat. Chet, I'm going to let you figure out which one we want to grab next, because I'm seeing a bunch of good questions.
There's a whole bunch of stuff. We could go deep on a whole bunch of these. I think there are a couple that we want to just surface level, see if we can hit real quick. First one, when will FSharp be considered on equal footing alongside VB and C# when it comes to GUI frameworks, DB tooling, graphical tooling, generators, designers, analyzers, yada, yada?
I love the phrasing of this question, because there's a whole lot of VB people that would ask the same thing. And so, first of all, for better or worse, dotnet is, the team is a very C# focused team. And also, as we have publicly stated it this way, which is, millions of developers on C#, hundreds of thousands on Visual Basic, and tens of thousands on FSharp. So we are small, and we're small, but terribly important. And so I do not want anybody to think, oh, it's too small, Microsoft won't care. We do care. We care a lot. There's a lot of very good reasons for that. But it is very hard for a team, let's say ASP.NET, for it to properly support FSharp. And I want to be clear as to why it's hard. It's hard because they don't understand FSharp. And if they were to do something that worked in FSharp, and in fact, I don't know if we've pulled it yet, but we have an ASP.NET template, which is somebody who didn't understand FSharp. And they created a template for ASP.NET for FSharp, except it's a very not FSharp template. And oh my gosh, please go and use some other tool on this, because this is not going to be a good answer for you, Giraffe, or something else to be better. So we have this problem in the fact that in order to do these other big libraries right, we would have to have very deep knowledge of F# into those. And remember, we have tens of thousands of developers. It's just really hard for Microsoft to do that. And this is one of the reasons and one of the ways F# is just fundamentally different, which is that work doesn't happen at Microsoft. That work happens in the community. And we have, I can't remember right now, the Maui tool. Y'all are going to know it. What's the Maui library?
Oh, Avalonia, FunkUI, and all those things.
The other one I'm thinking of, but yes, those two. Yes. So we have Fabulous. Isn't that it? Okay.
That's
I'm sorry.
the one. Fabulous. Yes.
There are so many. And in fact, that's one of the reasons if you're just starting in F#, I suggest you be part of the Discord where you can ask questions and you can say, oh gosh, there's all these answers for ASP.NET. Which one do I want to use? And you can find people be able to answer your questions. And that's the one you might want to use. So for these things, that doing it and the F# way is not just one way. And so we have several. ASP.NET is a great example with some amazing libraries that effectively wrap ASP.NET. They make it F#-like, and they are amazing. But they take different approaches. And so F# is a much more experimental. It's a much more community language, and it's not likely to change. That the GUI frameworks are going to stay at that level. DB tooling is something maybe we should take a little bit more of a look at, because I think that's more universal. And I actually don't know what's going on in the community on that. So I'm afraid I'm a little bit, I should know that, but I don't. But yeah, I will say all of that. Graphical tooling in general right now, we're terrible at. We have WinForms graphical tooling, and we're kind of on that anyway, all up. Overall, Visual Studio, someplace that Vlad's team gets huge kudos for, because we set as a goal a year and a half ago that Visual Studio needed to be better because it kind of was stinky. And the team has done a great job making the overall experience better. Generators on the roadmap, really hard. I don't know what miracle Vlad's going to pull off yet, and I'm a generation expert, so we're going to get something going there. We know it's a problem. It's a problem because the runtime is relying on them. And we have things like regex, which you can get fundamental faster performance if you have a generator. So it probably won't be everything. It's probably not going to be so much convenience things as the ones that have real value, although we don't know what it's going to look like, and maybe it will be more universal. And analyzers we're working on. So I think that some of this we're working on, some of which we're not, and I hope I answered the question, but we are we're focused on where we make decisions on our investments here, because we aren't a huge team, and we need to make good choices. And I'm happy with the choices we're making. And I'm really happy the way the community is stepping up in the places. And that includes our entire Visual Studio Code experience, which is maybe better than the C# one. This is all the community. I'll give all the kudos to Ionide. It is an amazing experience. They're different. And so I'm not sure it's an apples to oranges with C#. But okay, so I think I've answered this one. Probably spent too much time on it. So you want to pull something in that maybe is not, it is for me. I was say maybe not for me, okay, for me. And then I'll be quiet for a while.
I think you touched on this one somewhat, so let's just go ahead and roll right into it.
I want to actually answer this one directly. And I have a huge soft spot for F# for early developers. And one of the reasons is that I recognize Python's impact and the lack of curly braces. So those of you that don't know, I came from Visual Basic. I respect very much all the language. I love all the languages I work with, but curly brackets are not as free as they are for some people. The curly brackets are annoying for some people. And the indented model that Python used, I hated when I worked in Python because we didn't have editor support. Now we have good editor support. And the indented pattern of F# is an extremely good one, I believe, for the human being. As well as inferred typing is extremely good for an early developer, as well as functional first is the way JavaScript works, and therefore is very good for an early developer. And so I would love it if we were able to smooth off some rough edges. We're not there now, where we could say that F# is for everyone. There are some places that we're not going to get over the rough edges, like the fact that there's going to be a lot of options if we're relying on the community for something like ASP.NET. It's not like, here's the one answer, which we kind of do that for C#. And so I think that it's a complicated question, but I am not ready to say that it's not for everyone. I also have a lot of faith that the people that need F#, and I can't give you names, but there are people that invest heavily in FSharp, and we know how much it matters to them for that. We know of companies that use this for critical operations. We know of projects that have been done that have said they could not have done it in C# because they need the functional approach. They need SRTPs, or they need computation expressions, or they need one of the other things that FSharp does really, really well. And so those people have it. They found FSharp. And so in terms of like where we take the language, I think our worst kind of rough edge right now is actually our warnings. And so maybe we'll be able to get a little bit more on that. Maybe we'll have a big community effort again, like there was 5 years ago on that. Fortunately, that one solved all the easy things, but we have the hard stuff left. So yeah, I'm not ready to say it's not for everyone. Big corporations probably aren't going to be ready to jump onto it for everyday programming but it works for them. But I'm not ready to try to sell it into certain big teams. But I'm not willing to give up anybody just yet on FSharp. That's my personal opinion. Okay, which it was for me. I got it. Okay. All right. Anything on that y'all want to add? Okay, get one that's not from me, please. What I heard from you.
Well, unfortunately, this next one's kind of you too.
Oh, okay. Well, so I just want to say that these are the ones that drive. They drive so much of FSharp, and that's why I'm like, I think about FSharp, and so I don't feel like I'm in the trenches as much. So I would like to get back to them for that reason. Okay, so feature status similar to C# page. Thank you, because we've been working on the C# feature status page, and there's an enhancement we're looking to do on that to clarify one thing that's not very clear there yet. I think that's a good idea. We've been using projects and milestones, which is actually the way a lot of the .NET teams work. C# is kind of unique in its feature status. So I really appreciate you sharing that insight, that it would be useful for you to have that, because that is just really good insight. And maybe it's just a page that raises some of our milestones, which is the way we do that. I will say that it's a little complicated because timeline-wise, some things go into FSharp 8 and some things go into the current Visual Studio. So we have both quarterly releases and full year releases. So there's not like in FSharp 7.2, okay, but at the same time, we do have things that go out periodically. And so it's a little bit complicated, but maybe a feature status page would help us to find a way to communicate some of that. So yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you very much.
And with that, I think we're caught up on a lot of the major questions. There's a lot of great stuff in the chat about people talking about the mobile support. We've got folks here that drive that are doing a great job on that day in and day out. Some folks drawing lines between the Comet MC or MVU implementation in C# and how that parallels Fabulous so nicely. But I think we are mostly caught up. There were a couple technical questions in there as well that Vlad's already knocked out.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, great. Okay, well then, one of the things I would love to touch on before we get out of here, because I hinted ahead to it, is I wonder if we should let Vlad give an update on our position on nullables.
Right. So this we will try. So first, we will probably try to release the. Well, it's a lot of probably. We are planning to release an article describing nullables, and the feature itself might go. It might go not strictly with release.NET 8, but like 8.200, which is the point release, which is a matter of like a couple of months from the original one. We're hoping to get it in as soon as possible. It just requires a lot of corner cases testing, but yeah, pretty much what we're trying to achieve, and it's a bigger goal in general, but we are trying to extend type system of FSharp to being able to so people will be able to express nulls explicitly. So if you enable the feature on MS build level, and probably gonna start enabling it for the certain target frameworks with a certain compiler versions and language versions, and it will mean that if the feature is enabled, like it was in C#, all your codes or all your types become non-nullable. So like they cannot have null as a valid value. And if you want to support it, like, for whatever reason, like, for the interop reasons, or like, you just used to designing with the nulls in mind, you can specify every type as a this type or null, as you can do right now with discriminated unions. But you can say, like, the my type equals int or string, right? Like, or not actually int or string, but like, the one case or another case. And like in the end, you can put the null just as a literal null, and the type system from then on will take care of everything, and CodeGen, it will take care of everything. So if we will be generating an external assembly, we will put all the nullable attributes which Rosslyn understands. We will read the nullable attributes which Rosslyn understands, and it will light up in the IDE as like the type which is nullable. It will cover both system.nullable as for value types and nullable references. We looking into ways how to ease up working with options, value options, and nulls internally. So like you can kind of, for example, match on both option and value option in the same way, and the compiler will decide which one to use. I mentioned that this is the part of bigger work, and this will, we hope that it will evolve into things like anonymous discriminated unions, like when you can say it's int or string or double or null. So like you can have as many types as you want, and then compiler will force you into being exhaustive, like account for null or account for like every single type, as well as we are exploring the literal types from TypeScript, when you can say like it's ABC or null. So and the compiler again will force you to do things. You can opt out for it. So at first, I think it will be opt-in for everyone, and like we opt our projects in forcibly, so to kind of test it, like dog food it ourselves. We will make an announcement when the feature is available, since it will be probably the biggest feature in terms of changes in FSharp 8 or 8.1 or 8.01, but like it will be near the release of the .NET 8. Though like it probably not the coolest feature, because the our community contributions are amazing around the records updates, and probably a bunch of people here in the chat who contributed it. So yeah, like we make an announcement, we make we make instructions how to enable it for your projects, and like if you will help us test it, it will be great, and like report any issues. That will be also great. But yeah, like we're trying to make it, to summarize, we're trying to make it explicit, and we improving interop with the C# nullable types. So it's more natural to call into APIs which return nullables or which accept nullables, and like with least amount of checks from the from the user, like from the consumer side.
So I also want to make sure to summarize that for folks that aren't like, FSharp specific. I know we have people in the chat who are just like, oh, I'm so glad you explained it that way, because you told me exactly what you're doing. And we may also have some people that say, got lost along the way. So for the second group of people, there's things that are coming to change the FSharp type system that as a user, things will just get better. You won't have to worry about some of the details, but there'll be new features available and better C# interop. So that's why this look at the type system. And I also want to say that you said something in passing that I know is really confusing to people, and that is that we use the same word in two completely different ways, and that is the phrase CodeGen. And so when we say CodeGen, and we almost never say it except CodeGen, we don't say code generation, but just CodeGen. To us, that is one word, which is the mechanism by which we lower a language into IL. Okay, so that is what that process has been called since like 1998. Okay, so that is called CodeGen. We have another thing which we sometimes call source generation, but Vlad earlier called code generation, which is something that we do to create F-sharp code or effectively create F-sharp code from other F-sharp code in order to better to do something smarter. Okay, and that's the same as the C# source generation. So I just want to clarify that because I know every time we use the word code gen and the way we use it every day, that it's terribly confusing to people.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I just got so used to it.
Yeah, no, I know, I get it. We always do that. I mean, it's totally. I just wanted to toss that out there. So we have 10, 12 minutes left. Are we getting any more comments in the?
I just wanted to touch on one thing about sort of what Vlad was just describing before we move on. For those people that aren't F-sharp folks, this is what Vlad is describing now. This is a very simplistic example. Like you could always define system.nullable with an int generic parameter, but this kind of type declaration or type definition in F-sharp is what is natural, is what is idiomatic, is what feels good. And if you've used TypeScript before, then you've probably been familiar with something very much like this. If you're really strict, you might have had another one right here just to cover things. And then the sort of follow-on potential world that Vlad was just talking about is a little bit further on, being able to define unions in line. This is really nice because today, to do this, you have to do this. And this is gross and, more importantly, has runtime implications because these are actual reference types here. Whereas all of this stuff has the potential to be optimized and handled in a more consistent way by the compiler. So just wanted to put something up that people could see and maybe point to understand what Vlad was saying.
Yeah, and one more application, which is actually one of my kind of favorite ones, is that when you enable this feature for your project or your projects, anytime you type the the declarative functions, every time you declare the function and you get in parameters, and like when we if you don't specify them explicitly, we infer the type, right? Like, and the type inferred will be a non-nullable type. And if you want to, you will have to go through pain of saying, oh, it's int or null, or it's string or null, because we want people to kind of not use nulls in their codes. Kind of maybe option is a better choice, or value option is a better choice if you want to handle the lack of the value. But we want to be explicit about nulls. We kind of do that now when we on the normal F# types to be able to specify null for it. You have to put the allow null literal attribute, I think, and like then we allow it. But now we like if you say nullable on or like nullable enable, then like we treat every type as a non-nullable, and you have to be explicit.
Cool.
We've got a couple questions that have come in that aren't directly related to that. So I want to make sure we're done with nullable support and anonymous unions. Good. All right. We've got sort of another question about MAUI support in general. For me, like MAUI with F# should work out of the box modulo some potential like designer support issues, and I think the lack of hot reload as well. But what the F# community has done is built a great framework called Fabulous that supports MAUI, that provides like an F# native way of working with MAUI elements. And I'm sure there are several others as well that I think are a little less well known than Fabulous, like elmush.maui. But the Fabulous maintainers, some of them are in the chat here today. They've done a great job at making F# feel great with MAUI. So that's where I would start looking.
Yeah. All right. What do we have next?
A couple VS Editor kind of specific questions here. In general, folks, Vlad's team has been knocking it out of the park with support for VS features like this. But the way to get The way to raise those up to where the team knows that they need to work on them is what Vlad said here: create issues over at the repo, because that's what they're working off of.
Yeah, definitely. And ping issues, if you see them there, we definitely notice when you thumbs up something or thumbs down it. You know, we pay attention to that. So yeah, that'd be awesome. All right. Do we have anything else? We're coming up near the hour. We have 5 more minutes, though, so we can answer a few more questions. Or if anybody feels like there's something that they want to share of the hosts and Vlad, and we can do that.
Well, there's a bunch of things we could talk about aside from nullibles and stuff.
Guess
performance. Maybe we should touch on performance. You're so happy. I just said maybe we can faster, and it got faster. It was great.
Yeah, sure. Actually, first I wanted to kind of give a shout out to Amplifying FSharp initiative. It's driven by like a bunch of community members. I don't even know like how many people are there. I only know that Edgar and Florian by the names, but I last time I joined the meeting it was much more people. So I apologize for not remembering names. I'm very bad with names. And if Chet, if you can share the link to the Amplifying FSharp for people who are interested in kind of, you know, either contributing or just, you know, like looking at how people, you know, contribute to compiler, to the tooling. I believe they used to make online sessions every Friday. Some people are on vacations now, so it's probably gonna resume at some point, you know, in the like later in the summer or in the autumn. And yeah, it's like it's great people, great community. They like if you want to implement something yourself, if you're interested in that, they can help you with that for sure. Or like, you know, we can help you as well. But you know, like it's gonna be easier to go through this channel, and like, you know, people can always ping us, and us meaning, you know, someone from the team, and you know, like we're always happy to help. We obviously want to close our all backlog, but we physically cannot do that now because, like, you know, it's a lot of things, unfortunately. But yeah, like all the questions in the chat about like, hey, you know, where's this issue will be fixed or you know, acknowledged, or like where this tooling feature will be implemented, is the answer is we want to implement it yesterday, but you know, like we had a lot of things to do as well, and we eventually get to it. And like, you know, the more people kind of the more people want it, you know, the faster it's probably going to get. But we also should, you know, try to keep an eye on bugs or on perf issues, which, you know, brings the perf question that for the past year, we've been both, you know, us as a team and community members working a lot on the performance improvements. And I cannot even probably enumerate all of them. The graph type checking, which was introduced by Florian and Janusz, is it's experimental type of type checking, and it shows to be like much faster on like certain types of projects. It's now an experiment. We run it in CI on every build, and hopefully we're going to enable it soon. By default, and ongoing work with the thing called transparent compiler, which is driven by like one of the folks from the team. It's to simplify the underlying compiler like engine, if you wish, so it can be easier to debug. It can be easier. It will be more deterministic. It can be like more cacheable and faster in the tooling scenarios. We improved Visual Studio quite a bit, and I'm not sure if I should say it here, but like we had a bug recently which was caused by the fact that we became faster. We started garbage collecting more, but we almost fixed it. But yeah, there are like countless improvements in a perf, and it's been great. And like the great thing is that many of them were contributed by the community. Yeah. So thanks for that.
And these are not small numbers that he's talking about. So the main project I work on is FS Autocomplete, which is a language server protocol implementation for VS Code. And when these tools came out, I did an example, or I did a version of a branch of that code that used them. And turning on the caching and the graph-based checking flag and doing a couple iterations of analysis on my build based on that saved between 30 and 40% of the time of that build. And so that's a CLI based build that doesn't necessarily take into account what you will see in your editor, but like that's still a great result. And that's for my one small or relatively small project that has like 6 sub projects in it. So I'm very impressed by the work that the FSharp team and the community have put into making that a reality.
And most performance advancements, improvements everywhere, no matter what, are a bunch of little things. There are a whole bunch of little things adding up. And so we've gone through this year where it was like on a regular basis, there would be like, well, we did this thing. And in this scenario, which is the one we targeted for, this got this many % faster. And this other targeted scenario got this faster because we target something, figure out what's wrong with that one. And then, but in terms of your experience, it's a whole bunch of different scenarios. So you've got time for project load. You've got time for IntelliSense between keystrokes. You've got just dozens and dozens of different scenarios that are your experience. And so we definitely love feedback. We know we've gotten feedback that people have felt it be faster, which is great because ultimately we are going for that feel of it being faster. We measure, we're totally data oriented on this with key scenarios that we know about. But in the end, what matters is that it feels comfortable. And it definitely was, lagging C# pretty badly a year ago. And we're really happy with the improvements that we've made. And also along the way, we've also done some things that helped unify the editors. That's still a long journey for us. And so happily, between Chet and Christoph, we're able to help identify well what kind of belongs in a shared layer and be able to work towards a day where more and more will be able to be shared across the editors, which is a highly desirable place to be. And where C# is trying to be as well, where between language service providers and having common analyzers, our analyzer SDK could be better. There's just a whole ton of things that we can do, building out more and more this joint editor layer, where everybody can benefit, which also means everybody's going to contribute. So both ends of that come together. But when we're all working together as a community, which is the strength of FSharp, then we build things that are much better than we would do it if it was just Microsoft on its own. So we're coming up on the hour. We're at the hour. So do we have anything, Chet, that you're saying in the chat that we ought to answer before we say goodbye, or should we just go ahead and say goodbye?
There's a couple things about specific issues that folks would like addressed, and some of them are up on the either .NET/FSharp repo or FSharp/FSLang suggestions repos. But if you're seeing your question up here, you might see that the answer is pretty consistent, right? Please raise an issue. That's how the team tracks things. That's how we are able to or I say we, that is how Vlad and his team are able to know what people want, right? Yeah. So that's one of the more effective ways to make sure that your needs bubble up to the team. Yeah,
it's really important that you talk to us. Even if you're new, we still want to hear from you. Understand where the paper cuts are and the big things are, and it's just super awesome when you do chat with us and the repo. If you don't know where to put it, put a discussion up. We're there. Also, some time on Discord. Maybe we're about to end, so I don't think we maybe put a Discord link in the chat. And
yep, already done.
I think it's time for us to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today. Chet and Vlad, thank you so much for your insight and all your good stuff today. And it's been a fun show.
Yeah.
With that, I'll say bye.
Bye, folks.
See everyone.